I divorced my husband because he cheated on me 2 years ago. He had an affair with my younger sister. They even sent me an invitation to their wedding. My mother also said she would attend the ceremony, which made me feel like she betrayed me too. Then she told me, "I'll do something fun, just wait and see." My name is Kelly, and I had a plan to punish them both. My husband and I worked at the same company, and I was his boss. He was a bit unreliable, but he was sincere and friendly. I was responsible for his training and teaching him the job. At first, he was nervous about the new work, but we gradually grew close. One day he asked me, "Helen, are you free on our next day off?" I was surprised but thrilled to see how confident he was outside the office, which made my heart skip a beat. After that, we often went out together. After 3 months of dating, he asked me, "Kelly, will you be my girlfriend?" He had become very good at his job and was praised by other bosses. When he got promoted and transferred to a different department, he proposed to me, "Kelly, will you marry me?" I happily agreed. My parents and younger sister Lauren immediately liked Scott, and our wedding went smoothly. Lauren, who was the same age as Scott, got along well with him right away. She often said, "You are so lucky to marry such a kind man like Scott." And it looks like people at work have high expectations for him. Lauren had just broken up with her boyfriend and seemed to be yearning for marriage, constantly expressing how jealous she was of me after our wedding. I kept working and taking care of household chores, supporting Scott both at work and in our personal lives. At least I thought I was supporting him. About a year after our marriage, he started coming home later and later, and we hardly ever had dinner together. "Scott, we haven't talked about work lately. Is everything okay?" I asked. "Nothing's wrong," he replied. "But you've been coming home late every day. If there's anything I can do to help." "There isn't," he said, sounding annoyed. He used to talk to me about everything, but lately he seemed irritated when I brought up work. On his days off, he'd either sleep all day, claiming he was tired, or go out to clear his head. Feeling that we hadn't been spending any quality time together, I made a suggestion to Scott. "Hey Scott, how about we go to a spa together during next month's holiday?" My sister recommended a place to us. "A spa, huh?" "Yes, it's a place where we can heal our body and mind from daily stresses at work," I explained. He seemed busy, so I made a hotel reservation with the spa for him. 1 week before the spa trip, I asked, "Scott, what time should we leave the house next week?" "Huh? Oh, is the spa trip next week? I forgot to mention, I have to go on a business trip next weekend." "What? But you've known about the spa trip for quite some time." "Well, it's work, so it can't be helped," he said. "Right, I see." Scott's department seemed to be busier than ever with frequent business trips. I had no choice but to give up this time as well. As always, Scott left early in the morning for his business trip. If things had gone as planned, we would have been heading to the spa together by now, I thought to myself. While I was feeling down, I got a phone call from the hotel where I had made a reservation. Despite having sent a cancellation email, it seems they did not receive it due to an error, and they called to confirm our arrival time. I thought I might as well invite Lauren. I called my parents' house, but Lauren had been out since the morning and wouldn't be back home. So, as a last resort, I decided to invite my mother to the spa. I half gave up on the idea that my mother would be able to go on such short notice, but surprisingly, she agreed. "Really? Is it okay to leave Dad alone?" "Right now, I'm more worried about you than your father," she said. It seemed she had noticed that I had been down lately and decided to accompany me on the trip. "Thanks, Mom. I'm the one who should be thanking you. I'm happy to be able to take a trip with you like this." I decided to enjoy the trip with my mother, which I hadn't done in a long time. However, when we arrived at the hotel, we witnessed something shocking. "Mom, look at that." At the hotel, we saw Scott, who was supposed to be on his business trip. He was arm in arm with a woman, looking happy as they entered the hotel where we were supposed to stay. The moment they entered the hotel, the woman with Scott turned her face in our direction for a moment. "You've got to be kidding," I thought. The woman with Scott was my sister, Lauren. After that, I was in a state of shock and don't remember much about how I got home. After drinking some tea my mother made for me, my feelings finally started to calm down. He had been deceiving me. Not just Scott, I had also been deceived by Lauren. After calming down, I called Scott's department. As I had suspected, his department had been trying to reduce their workload for the past few years, and they were not making employees go on business trips or do any overtime as much as possible. When I told my mother about the days when Scott came home late or was on business trips, it turned out that Lauren was also not at home during those days. It was all starting to make sense. All those days when he came home late and said he was on business trips, he was actually meeting up with Lauren. When I learned the truth, anger welled up inside me rather than sadness. "Mother, I'll divorce Scott. I don't want to see Lauren, so I won't visit the house for a while." She kept silent but understood my feelings. I prepared everything before Scott came back. I arranged the divorce papers, signed a new lease for a house, packed my belongings, and moved into an apartment where I could stay until I officially moved into the new house. I left the divorce papers and a letter for Scott at the house. All the details regarding alimony and such would be handled through my lawyer, as stated in the letter. I also blocked all his contacts. I didn't want Lauren and Scott to know my new address, so I didn't tell my parents. Since we worked at the same company, we occasionally passed each other, but I completely ignored him. Realizing how hopeless the situation was, he quickly agreed to the divorce. He didn't tell anyone the reason for our divorce, but our colleagues seemed to have sensed it and avoided the subject. 5 years passed, and I kept my distance from him and my family. One day, after finishing work and returning to my room, I found my mother standing in front of me. "Mom, what's wrong?" "I have something I want to tell you," she said, showing me an invitation. "This is from Scott and Lauren." It turned out that Lauren had left our family home and moved in with Scott. I thought they might get married, but never expected them to have a wedding ceremony and invite our parents. "So, Mom, are you going?" "Of course I am," she replied. "I see," I said, feeling like I was the only one who couldn't forgive them. They must have known this, which is why they invited only our parents to the wedding. I had no right to say anything since I had distanced myself from both Scott and my parents. Seeing me depressed, my mother smiled. "Don't worry, I'm not going because I forgive them. Just you wait and watch." On the day of the wedding, my mother called me through a video call. "I don't want to see their faces," I said, about to hang up. But I remembered my mother's words and kept the call connected. The screen showed a slideshow that was being presented. The MC began introducing the slides. This slideshow was made by the bride's mother. She gathered photos from her beloved daughter's birth to the present and created this slideshow. I was surprised that my mother, who wasn't good with technology, could create such a slideshow. It brought back a feeling of depression inside me. "Mom, you did this much for Lauren?" But in the next moment, I was captivated by the screen. This isn't Lauren. The slideshow started with a photo of me when I was born. The MC continued, "So cute. There's a resemblance to Lauren somehow." As the guests watched with a relaxed atmosphere, Lauren's expression stiffened. The MC continued, "Since she was young, the bride has always been devoted to her family. She was a diligent student and succeeded in entering her desired university. After starting her job, she became a very reliable employee at the company." Lauren's friends and colleagues, who knew about her student days and workplace, began to buzz with excitement. "Huh? Is that a photo from the welcome party at University N? Lauren didn't go to such a good university, did she? Hey, isn't that a photo from the company's welcome party? Wait a minute, looking closely, it's completely different. Wait, if this isn't Lauren. Scott also seemed to have noticed. What the hell is this? This isn't Lauren. The MC, unaware of the bride and groom's pale faces, continued to advance the slides. And then she met the groom, Scott, at the company. According to the bride's mother, she initially taught and trained the groom as his instructor. Then the two got married. What followed were photos from my wedding with Scott. The MC couldn't hide their confusion. Realizing something was wrong, the MC got quiet. At that moment, my mother took the stage and grabbed the microphone. From here on, I'll take over and explain, she said smoothly while changing the slides. Even after marriage, my daughter supported him in both personal and professional aspects. However, due to how busy Scott got, he couldn't find any time for her. So my daughter planned a spa trip to help relieve his stress. Wait, please, Lauren said, her face pale, and Scott made frantic attempts to stop my mother, but she continued with the slides. The next photo showed Scott and Lauren entering the spa hotel together, looking very close to each other. Finally, the bride and groom appeared in the photos, and both the MC and the guests fell silent. Scott and Lauren looked even more pale. But Scott declined the trip planned by my daughter due to a business trip. He said it couldn't be helped, my mother said, her voice steady and strong. He had to go on a business trip for work, so my daughter invited me to the spa. That's where we saw his affair. When my mother said those words, everyone started to talk and buzz about what she had revealed. Huh? An affair? And this wedding is for Lauren and Scott, right? Could it be that this wedding is based on their affair? To answer the guests' questions, my mother continued slowly. Scott swore to marry my beloved daughter Kelly and make her happy, but instead he betrayed her. To make matters worse, he cheated on Kelly with her own sister, Lauren. Mother, stop it already. Today is my wedding day. Why won't you celebrate my happiness? Lauren cried as she tried to stop our mother. Still, my mother coldly looked at Lauren and said, I have always wished for your happiness, but you ruined it first. Kelly always considered not only herself, but also the happiness of her family. What about you, Lauren? Have you ever thought about how much Kelly would be hurt by your actions? Well, she always seems so happy. It's not fair, Lauren responded. So instead of being happy for your family, you just got jealous, huh? My mother asked. Mother-in-law, please stop. She is your precious daughter too, right? If that's the case, can't you celebrate our new beginning? Why are you doing this? Scott pleaded. I don't want to become a family with someone as dishonest as you. I saw it clearly at today's ceremony. If you really intend to start something with Lauren, why didn't you invite a single person from your own company? If you're going to have such a grand ceremony, shouldn't you apologize to Kelly? It's selfish to invite me and her father to the wedding without making any effort like that. But Kelly has been ignoring me all this time, Scott protested. Of course she has, after what you've done. It's only natural, my mother replied. But that's all in the past, isn't it? Scott argued. Do you think her wounds will heal in just 5 years? Do you think you can regain our trust in such a short time? Don't be ridiculous, my mother said. After those words, my mother angrily left the venue with my father. I could hear my mother's voice from the cell phone. The reason for your divorce? Did you see that, Kelly? Yes, I replied. I'm sorry for reminding you of painful things, she said. I just can't stand seeing those two acts like nothing happened. No thank you, I feel relieved. It's like you said everything I wanted to say. That's right, Kelly, you always keep everything to yourself. I thought it was too kind of you not to tell your colleagues the reason for your divorce. After that, my mother sent me the recording of her conversation with Scott during the wedding. As my mother said, even if time passes, it's not easy to forget. Moreover, Scott showed no signs of remorse, calling it a thing of the past. I decided to start my second life by giving Scott a proper punishment. I chose to do it during his presentation at the company. It was open to volunteers from various departments, so I quickly signed up and entered the conference. When it was Scott's turn, his supervisor, unaware of his remarriage, said, "Scott, you seem even more motivated today because you just got married." "Yes, I will do my best for my family," he replied happily. He should have known I was in the room, but he didn't. I became even more determined and played the recorded audio I received from my mother. The participants were surprised by the sudden noise, but as they learned about his affair with my sister after marrying me, they began to accuse him. "Scott, didn't you say that the reason for the divorce was a difference in values?" someone asked. I couldn't help but burst into laughter. "Oh, really? Did you say something like that? Well, I can't understand a value that involves cheating with your own wife's sister. I apologize for mixing personal matters into this important presentation. I have decided to quit as of today. I endured it because I like this company, but I cannot bear to be in the same place as him any longer." Just as I was about to leave, the board members intervened to stop me. "Wait a minute, Kelly. You're an essential asset to our company. If someone should leave, it should be Scott." "Huh, but me? I've been expected to have a promising future," Scott protested. "We had expectations in the past, but lately you've been wearing worn-out clothes and you're not focused. It seems like you've completely lost your problem-solving abilities that you had before. We're not expecting a lot from you anymore," they said. Lauren, who had always been bad at housework and did nothing when she lived with her parents, became a full-time housewife after marriage. Apparently, she left most of the house chores for Scott to do, even when he faced difficulties at work. I couldn't give Scott advice like I used to, and he started causing more trouble at work. The fact that he had cheated on his wife's sister spread quickly within the company, and his reputation went downhill fast. Once respected and seen as a rising star, he was now viewed with suspicion and disdain by his colleagues. His work began to suffer, and he made more mistakes, further tarnishing his image. At the next board meeting, it was decided that I would stay at the company, but Scott would be transferred to a remote area. He was essentially being demoted, with plans to lay him off in the near future. The company couldn't afford to keep someone who had caused so much scandal and trouble. Lauren, who had been enjoying her life as a housewife with his money, quickly abandoned him when she found out about the transfer. She switched to another man without hesitation, thinking she could easily find another way to maintain her lifestyle. However, the man she chose turned out to be a typical freeloader. He had no job and no ambition, and he started living off Lauren's money without contributing anything. Now, Lauren is suffering from his debts. She's desperately working 2 jobs, day and night, just to make ends meet. She's exhausted and miserable, a far cry from the carefree life she had envisioned. She had thought she could escape the consequences of her actions by moving on quickly, but reality hit her hard. As they say, what goes around comes around. If you do something wrong, it will come back to haunt you. Seeing Scott and Lauren in such a state, I finally felt a sense of closure. Watching them struggle, I realized that their betrayal had ultimately led them to their downfall. Scott lost his career and reputation, and Lauren lost her comfortable life. They both faced the consequences of their actions, and it brought me a sense of peace. With this newfound peace, I felt ready to start a new life. I could finally move forward without the weight of their betrayal hanging over me. I was free to build a future on my own terms, without the shadows of the past holding me back. I focused on my career and started taking on new challenges at work. My colleagues, who had seen me endure so much with grace and strength, supported me. I received a promotion, recognizing my dedication and hard work. It was a fresh start, and I was determined to make the most of it. In my personal life, I began to reconnect with old friends and make new ones. I joined a local community group and started volunteering, finding joy in helping others. These activities helped me rebuild my confidence and reminded me of the goodness in people. I also took time for self-care, exploring hobbies I had neglected during my marriage. I started painting again, a passion I had always loved but had put aside. The creative process was therapeutic, allowing me to express my emotions and find healing. Eventually, I even opened my heart to the possibility of love again. I went on dates, met new people, and learned to trust again. It wasn't easy, but I knew that not everyone was like Scott and Lauren. There were good, honest people out there, and I deserved happiness. As the years went by, I found myself happier and more fulfilled than I had ever been. The pain of the past had faded, replaced by the joy of new experiences and the satisfaction of personal growth. Scott and Lauren were distant memories, reminders of lessons learned but no longer sources of pain. Their lives, on the other hand, continued to be marked by the consequences of their actions. Scott never recovered his career, moving from one low-paying job to another. Lauren remained trapped in a cycle of financial struggle, her new partner's debts dragging her down. In the end, I realized that true happiness comes from living with integrity and kindness. Betrayal and deceit bring only temporary satisfaction, followed by long-term suffering. I chose to live my life with honesty and compassion, and in doing so, I found the peace and happiness I had been seeking all along.